Penguin Random House Audio presents The Death of Us by Abigail Dean. Read for you by Claire Skinner and John Hopkins.
For Richard, with love. Part 1. Isabel. Let me talk again, then, about the night you came to our house. You won't know this, but there was a period in my life when I talked about it all of the time. All I seemed to do, in fact, was talk about it. I talked about it to the police, when I still hoped that they might find you. I talked about it in interviews. I talked about it to therapists and psychologists and psychiatrists. I talked about it to my friends and to my parents, and awfully to a woman in a bathroom at a party. And people wanted to hear it, of course. There was a greed in the way they listened, in the widening of an eye or the inclination of a head. Although at the time I was nicer, more patient, and I tended to entertain them well enough. Over the years I became less forthcoming. You'll realise that yourself soon enough. And eventually, I refused to talk about it at all. You must never have talked about it. But did you come close? Were there moments when you sat down at your kitchen table, dark oak, beige tiles, with your wife at the stove and the telling in your throat? I've seen your kitchen now. The world has. Your kitchen is ugly. And believe it or not, it felt good to find this out. Did you rest your hands on one of those twee placemats decorated with woodland fauna of the British Isles and swallow it back down? The police tell me you gave your plea and nothing more. They think me a fragile thing, and they manage my expectations accordingly. I should not expect you to talk now. It's a pity. I would like to hear what you remember. I would like to know if your memory accords with my own. Who's to tell who's right, after all of these years? In my memory, it was the beginning of summer. The days were stretching, nudging away at the darkness. Edward and I had worked hard that year. On Fridays, we would unburden ourselves of the week, talking over cold wine, bowls of crisps, Edward's cooking. There had been irregularities in the weeks before, things that had unsettled me at the time. You had left us a few deft clues which Edward had shrugged away, which I thought of only on my way to the bathroom in the middle of the night. I did not think of them then. We stood in the kitchen, softening into the weekend. We were talking about an intern at Edward's firm, immortalised, I suppose, by having wept in his office that day. Her name was Ellie, and every now and then I still think of her. Good luck, Ellie. May you have learnt to cry in bathroom stalls and darkened rooms just like the rest of us. Edward was saying, in the way he had, that he intended to help her out, that he would talk to the partners on Monday morning and tell them she was flailing. Edward, the great mediator. He mediates real disputes these days, the kind consisting of thousands of documents and hundreds of millions of dollars. But of course, you know. I imagine you've checked in on us over the years. I imagine you like to know how we're doing. Edward and me, with our successes, I don't suppose we've ever been difficult to find. Edward rarely talked about his day in this manner without me prizing it open, and I remember the satisfaction of it, how close he felt. It was one of the things I liked the best, that he was not somebody who disclosed things to any old person, that he felt at times like the courtyard parties we used to pass, walking home from work through Temple, which let so few people in. You might have seen the happiness in my face captured in the kitchen window, the subject of some warm, comfortable painting framed by the dusk. I found out that they had you the day after my 55th birthday. I had spent the prior evening alone on the terrace at Midsummer House, which I had booked diligently 3 months before. The maitre d' knew my name and what to bring to me, but when she asked if I was here for a special occasion, I shrugged. Nothing in particular. And it was true that 55 seemed little to celebrate. My phone rang at 8 a.m. I was still in bed. I'd been thinking self-pitying things, that it would be nice to hear the clatter in the kitchen, the slothful steps of a shared hangover, the promise of coffee and bed. When the phone went, I suppose I hoped that it might be Edward, apologetic that he hadn't called the day before. Instead, George, typically funereal. Edward christened him many years ago, George as in Smiley. George had never once smiled in our presence. George needed me at Cambridge Police Station. No, I had done nothing wrong. A car was on the way. The police station in Cambridge looked like a dungeon a child might design. Chain-link fences and concrete slabs, the kind of building one wouldn't expect to leave. I was met by a woman called Claire, who smiled and offered me tea. "Happy birthday," she said. "Was it yesterday?" Bravo, Claire, reader of files. She led me past desks to a room with soft furnishings and boxes of tissues. The window was open and the blinds chattered in the breeze. "Well then," Claire said, and sank into a sofa. "Here we are. I have very significant news." I had been in enough of these rooms to know already that this was the case. "We believe," Claire said, "that we have identified the man known as the South London invader." She leant forward with her hands on her knees. "That man is now in police custody," she said. I'll confess to you that I had imagined this moment before. Imagined it a lot, if truth be told. This was not how it played out. I pictured myself at the scene for a start. I recognized you on the street. I knew exactly who you were. I wore the clothes I wore to run in. You looked up at me, eyes pleading. I stood over you in your bed and tied you like meat. You were withered and pitiful. You begged. I had prepared a box of tools and I unpacked them without hurry and lined them up on the mattress beside your head. I found out later how it actually took place. Your children were at your table, and their children played underneath it. There was a leg of lamb in your oven, roasting for Sunday lunch. They got to you before the lamb was cooked. I feast on this detail. I wonder, did your family protest? Did they wring their hands and talk of some mistake? Did they encourage care, discretion, dignity? Did they press your medication into the officer's hands? I can only imagine what a shock this must be, Claire said, and the questions you may have for me. I want you to know, Isabel, that we're here for you and that we'll do all that we can to answer those questions. I looked out of the window. I could see another wall of the police station, row after row of windows reflecting the block where we sat. In truth, I could think of few questions. I had instead the sense of feeling very, very tired. "Can you tell me his name?" I asked. "Nigel Wood," she said. "He's 70 years old. He's a retired policeman living in Dorset." "Nigel?" I said, and Claire nodded. I couldn't help but laugh at that. For a moment, she seemed sure I was crying. She pushed the box of tissues in my direction and I waved her away. "I'm sorry," I said. "It's just..." She made a note of something. What the note said, I can only imagine. "I apologise," I said. "I don't know why I'm laughing." That's that.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?